Stephon Castle is the apple of their eye for the Utah Jazz, as they do come up with picks that they weren't particularly proud of end up having, but they do feel comfortable with the ability to either trade up and bag a better prospect or a more surefire prospect, or just trade them away in the attempt to get a bigger star player as Danny Ainge hopes to. If they do end up having the opportunity to draft Stephon Castle, though, I think that they definitely should. At 6'6" and 215 pounds, he has almost very close to the NBA body that is necessary. He averaged 11.1 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2.9 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.5 blocks, and shot 47.2% from the field to go along with 75.5% from the free throw line, but a concerning 26.7% from beyond the arc. Today, we're going to be talking about what makes him a great prospect, what could hold him back when he does reach the NBA level, and overall, how we feel about his potential fit with the Utah Jazz. Thanks for tuning in this video. If you like the NBA or if you're a Utah Jazz fan, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and in return, I'll go ahead and give you guys the most comprehensive breakdown that I potentially can. Let's go ahead and get into this one. In his draft prospect portfolio, his strengths are listed as the following: using his tools to play through contact on drives and finishes. He's also been listed as being a point of attack defender, excellent at pestering opponents, going for steals, and even rejecting shots at the rim with his length at the height of 6'6". And then they also say he's a willing ball mover with patience and court vision with the potential to play point guard. Those three things really are tantalizing to me. The Utah Jazz obviously need better perimeter defenders. Chris Dunn was known to be the ideal one that we had, but we were hoping that Keyonte George would end up taking up a little bit better across the season, and to be quite honest, he didn't. Jordan Clarkson was also abysmal at that point of the field, and you also had Colin Sexton, who would give it his best effort, but a lot of times it just came down to him being too small to really get in the way and affect certain plays. The energy was always there with him though. So with Stephon Castle being at 6'6" and having the wingspan that he has and the frame that already puts him at being 215 pounds, he can absorb contact when it is brought to him. He can learn to be a little bit more precautious with the way he positions his body at times, but that's to be expected for anybody coming out of college, especially with the fact that he played with UConn. And honestly, I don't have too many concerns with him defensively. He does get a little bit hungry and wanting at times, which is something that he's going to have to work on and dial back just a touch, because you do want him to be willing to gamble, but also not to over gamble, because in the NBA, if you miss that steal, that might just turn into 3 points going the other way. Aside from that, him being able to play through contact on drives and finishes is going to be very important, because it will allow him to be very effective in the dribbling game. He has the skill set of somebody that's more so the likes of a attack the basket, De'Aaron Fox, Russell Westbrook archetype player. Though his athleticism is very good, it's not necessarily extremely off the page, but he is 6'6" and he does have a strong frame as previously mentioned. So he has the ability to consistently finish at the rim without too much difficulty. He does have a little bit of a crafty bag when it comes to his layup package, and I do enjoy watching that. And he can also get above the rim and make things happen, which you'll never be mad at as long as it's your guy on your team. However, he also has been known to be a willing passer with patience, and he does have some of the skills to be a point guard. And to break that down just a little bit more, that essentially means that he has the mentality of a shooting guard. He's 6'6", he has the length, he has the height, he loves to attack the basket, he loves to get his bucket, but he also recognizes when it's not necessarily his time to score, or if things don't necessarily look like they're in his favor, he's definitely willing to go ahead and pass that ball off and give somebody else the opportunity to get a bucket or to be placed in a better situation for the team to be successful. And that's something that you want, whether he does end up being picked by the Utah Jazz or by another team, willing to know that he can be the two guard, but he has the ability to occasionally play that one, spread the ball around, give everybody else a little bit of love, and still get after his on his own. Because remember, in today's NBA, The point guards aren't pure point guards anymore. They're scoring guards that can pass the ball better than most other people on the floor, effectively. Now, the weaknesses are a little bit more obvious, one being his shooting beyond the arc. That 26.7% cannot be ignored. It's not a lowly 31, 32%. It's not slightly beneath average. 26% is pretty bad, like really bad. 1 for 4 from the field shooting every time you let one out of the can is kind of crazy odds. It's also stated that his position is a little bit uncertain. He wants to play point guard, but he's naturally more skilled in the facets of the game that would put him at being a 2 guard, being a shooting guard on the floor. And that's perfectly fine. And ultimately, it will come down to who else he plays with. And to be quite honest, I think that he has more point guard skills immediately than Keyonte George has. Keyonte George had the majority of the season where he either started or ended up playing significant minutes, and he had to learn that role of being a point guard because in college he played the small forward position. So it was a much needed adjustment for himself personally, because in high school he played point guard, but in college, that's not what he was known for doing. Stephon Castle has more of that passing sense, more of that court vision that I think I would prefer out of my one. But knowing that he's more of a scorer and more of a downhill scorer at that, I think that he does complement Keyonte George's game, because Keyonte George has a little bit of a floater bag. He does have a little bit of a layup package, but he's known for picking most of his shots to be, whether it be step back type of 3-pointers or just off the catch, which he surprisingly shot worse on than the ones where he was dribbling into his own shot. But it's just a comfortability thing, I think. And then coming into this offseason, I think he will drastically improve in that area. Stephon Castle needs to be in the gym, and he needs to start knocking down those shots as well, though, because he has to have a respectable jumper, as he ends up running into a situation where a lot of guys are willing to lean off and just not heavily focus on him because he has no ability to make them pay. If you're shooting 26% from 3, ideally most offensive possessions will end up with you being the one to shoot that 3-pointer. If you're open in the corner, you're probably not hitting that shot because you can't hit that shot anyways on the regular. With pressure on, shot clock down to the bottom, I don't think that we're worried about you. And that's something that he's going to really have to complete and focus on, especially with the Utah Jazz not having a very strong shooting unit when it comes to their backcourt or their wing depth. You hope that Taylor Hendricks continues to improve, because he did shoot above 40% overall in the games that he played, but he also didn't have the most meaningful minutes over the entirety of the season. So I'm hoping to see if this coming season we can see more consistency and see him put up those numbers against teams and players that really will seek to challenge him. For Stephon Castle, though, he's going to have to get better out the gate, because they already know on the scouting report he can't shoot threes. And if all you can do is attack the basket, they can sag off as much as they want to. And that's going to make your game harder to play, because they're going to be able to play you immediately in the paint. And then it's also going to allow them to double off of you and focus on actual shooters who can actually do damage when he makes that proper pass. He also has been expected to need to improve his creativity as a scorer and a passer, because a lot of his reads end up being basic, or a lot of his plays just end up being basic drives to the rim, basic finishes. Though he does have a little bit of a bag, and every now and then you might see a crazy turnaround, you don't always see it. It's not a consistent thing with him. So it's kind of like he's a one-trick pony, but he has a little bit of wiggle room every now and then. We need to see some more of it. We need to see the ultimate brand of his basketball brought to the fullest potential. And I think that he has the ability to do it with the Utah Jazz. The biggest thing is his defensive capabilities will always make him playable. So if he is having a night where he is unable to shoot the ball, I don't think it's going to be the worst thing on the globe, because ultimately everybody has a night like that. Everybody has a night where they shoot bad. And as he goes through those growing pains, as long as he's able to play defense on the other side of the floor, he'll always be able to balance out between himself and his personal matchup with the guard that he's facing. And because he's also 6'6", he has the ability to switch off on wings at pick and roll situations, and also can provide a sneaky challenge, I think, at the rim in short roll situations. And he's not going to be easily bodied and flattened out by any forward that you end up seeing on the court. He still has a ways to grow, as I said, and ultimately I think that his lack of shooting is going to be the most concerning part of his game, because in today's league, unfortunately, you need to be able to shoot to be effective, especially at the guard position nevertheless. But outside of that, I think that he has a very high ceiling, and he has the ability to be what the Jazz really need. Keontae George has the ability to be a great scorer, and defensively, he leaves a lot to be wanting. And at 6'4", you can kind of give him a little bit of leeway, but you also expect him to be a lot better. And I think coming into this next season, he will be. But I think Stephon Castle out the gate will be a miles ahead type better defender. And then offensively, he's going to be a lot more smoother, a lot more consistent in his attacks to the rim. But his lack of creativity could limit how successful he can be in the long term of his career if he does not get that change, because there's people specifically on coaching staffs that watch tape and take down those tendencies. So if you get pegged for being the exact same guy every single night and somebody has success with it, they're going to watch that tape and continue to apply it to him. His comparisons were the likes of Bruce Brown, Jalen Suggs, and Dante Exum, which aren't necessarily the greatest. I do prefer Jalen Suggs out of anybody. Obviously, he did make second team all defensive this year, which I did love for him. Honestly, he was giving Darius Garland hell up and down the court the entirety of their series, and that's why it went to 7 games in my opinion. But outside of that, I don't necessarily love the rest of the comparisons. I think that he has a very high ceiling, and I do think that particularly for him, Jalen Suggs is going to be the most likely situation for him to have to deal with. I think that if he can get his jumper to be even somewhat respectable, it will definitely increase the ceiling of his game a whole lot higher. But you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think Stephon Castle is the type of player that the Utah Jazz need to add on to their roster, considering the fact that he does have the ability to be a great defender, though he doesn't have that perimeter shooting? Or do you think there's another player, guard specific or forward specific, that has some other skill set that you would find to be more coveted for this particular roster and the fit with the other guys on the team? As always, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Thanks for tuning in this video. To help support the channel, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications, especially if you love NBA content or if you're a fan of the Utah Jazz. With that being said, as always, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.